Hello, everybody. Daekon here. Before we get started with this episode of Drunk Fandom, which is Stranger Things, I just wanted to give a few preliminary warnings. We recorded this back in April whenever the pollen had just started to come out in full force, so it affected my allergies a pretty good bit, and you can hear me like sniffing and clearing my throat a lot during this episode. I'm very, very sorry. But yeah, it's prevalent pretty much throughout the episode. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Also, there's a couple times where Ninjabush's mic echoes back at me. There was really nothing I could do about that in post. I did the best that I could, but I hope that it's not terribly distracting. But yes, with that, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. This episode was super fun to do and to talk about, and we will see you later. Yeah, enjoy. Bye.
Ever have that one friend who loves something you know nothing about? Something you wish they could explain better? Well, this isn't that show. Welcome to Drunk Fandom, the show where we have a drunk host explain something they love to a sober guest who is clueless.
Drunk Fandom contains swears and other not safe for work content. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. The Fierce Ferrets do not condone excessive drinking, but if you do, please drink responsibly. Enjoy the show!
Hey everyone, I'm here with Deacon Frostgrave. I'm Ninjabush, probably should have started with that. And we are here to talk about something that I probably should have gotten into a while ago, and people are like, how the fuck haven't you watched this?
So good.
Stranger Things. I have watched 15 minutes of the first episode, and I know I love the bartender, and that's all I know. Deacon, how about you introduce yourself and tell us what you're drinking tonight?
Hello, I'm Daekon. Before we started recording, I took about 4 shots of Captain Morgan's Jack O'Blast, which is pumpkin spiced rum. I've had it since Halloween. I bought like 4 bottles of these. But now that I've got like some booze in me, I'm now drinking a Mike's Hard Mango.
Good. Taking it down a bit.
Yeah. But so yeah, we're gonna talk about Stranger Things. It is a super good show. You said you only saw like 15 minutes of the first episode.
What I know is that kids were going missing. There's a little girl that broke into a restaurant, and the restaurant guy was my favorite character. I'm gonna guess, since he's my favorite character, this is how it goes, he did not make it past the first episode. And then there was D&D playing, so I was like, I'm into this, and then they fought the Demogorgon, which you don't do that in D&D. That's what I'm telling you. So, take it away, Mr. Expert.
All right, so the show starts off in like a laboratory, and there's a guy running, and it's like the lights are flickering in the halls, and it's all spoopy, and then he gets caught like fucking immediately. and and then like that's just the introduction to like there's some fuck shit happening in the show.
Really wouldn't have guessed.
But so the actual plot of the show kind of starts off with the hang on, let me put my glasses on. A bunch of kids playing D&D in the basement of Mike Wheeler. It is 4 friends. The names are Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas. And so they're all playing D&D, and Mike is DMing and he brings out the Demogorgon and they're like, oh my god. And Will, they like, are, one side is like, cast protect, and then the others are like, cast fireball, and he's like, I don't know what to do, and he's like, cast fireball, and he rolls, but Mike says that they gotta go home, and he fails the roll. He needed like a 13 to cast fireball, but he only rolled like a 7. So he tells him like, hey,
Demogorgon in this quickly, because we're gonna. But like, is it a 2-headed ape thing in like 5th edition, or what are we talking about? What's
so yes, it is the like 2-headed thing that has the like tentacle arms and shit. But yes, that like the Demogorgon. And so he fails the roll, and Mike would have died, or not Mike, Will would have died. So foreshadowing. So Will starts like riding his bike home, and there's like he passes by Hawkins' lab, and he sees like this thing in front of him, and he freaks out, and he falls off the side of the road, and he gets hurt. Like he like I'm pretty sure he like cuts himself up pretty bad. But so he goes like running off. He abandons his bike and he runs all the way to his house. And he gets there, and his mom and his brother are gone. They're not there. And he doesn't know what to do. So he thinks that he's still being chased. And he runs into the shed in the backyard and starts loading up a shotgun. And there is...
Kid knows how to use a shotgun?
Yeah.
Right.
But he starts like loading up the gun, and a thing unlatches, or the thing unlatches the bolt that's like locking the shed door, and the light kind of like shatters essentially. Like it gets like real bright, and then it cuts out, and then Will is gone. Like the gun is on the floor. He's nowhere to be seen. That's the foreshadowing. He should have cast protect, and he instead tried to load a shotgun to cast fireball. That's the foreshadowing from the D&D game.
All right then.
So the next morning, Hopper, probably the best fucking character in this entire series, goes into work, and Joyce, Will's mother, is there because that morning Joyce woke up and Will is gone, and she has no idea where they are, and her son Jonathan are arguing about like, well, you were supposed to be here, well, I had to work over, and blah blah blah. So they like, Joyce goes to the police department to tell like Hopper that like, hey, my son is missing. I have no idea like where the fuck he is. Can you like do something about it? And Hopper is like gaslighting her and being like, oh well, you know, most kidnappings happen by a parent, so maybe it was his dad like taking him or something. Which, by the way, Will's dad is like not in the picture. They're like, him and his mom are Will's mom and dad are separated or divorced, but they're okay. Yeah. So by the way, Joyce is played by Winona Ryder. I don't know if you made it to that point, but I mean, you probably did. She's the treasurer.
Okay.
I love her in like everything she's ever been in, especially Beetlejuice. That's mainly why. But but so anyway, You also meet Nancy, who is Mike's sister. She is also very important to the story, but for right now, I'm going to kind of like skip over some stuff with her. All you need to know is that she is friends with a girl named Barbara, or Barb for short. And she has a boyfriend named Steve. These are all important characters, but for right now, like, they're literally, like, they show up and they're just kind of talking about, like, I can't believe that you're dating Steve. Oh my god. Like, that kind of shit. And it's gross and dumb, and I hate it. I don't care about the love lives of teenagers.
All right.
I mean, it's interesting in the, like, context of the show, but you have all of this like supernatural bullshit happening, and so it's like super unimportant. Anyway, so Joyce and Hopper have their little conversation about, like, you know, Will's missing. And then it cuts to the lab where we meet Dr. Brenner. And they're all putting on these like hazmat suits, and they go down down an elevator, and they see like these weird like black roots and like this flesh thing all over the wall. And they ask about a girl. And Brenner says something like, well, she couldn't have gone too far. And we meet her. She's a little girl. She's wearing a hospital gown. She's got her head shaved. And she's like running through the forest on her own. And she comes across a restaurant. And she doesn't really, I mean, she's never really been out in the world before. But she sneaks in and starts eating the food, and the restaurant owner turns around and sees her, thinks she's a boy, and starts running after her. And he catches her and realizes that, oh no, you're a girl. And then that cuts from that to back to the school. Dustin, Lucas, and Mike are talking like they're the only real members of the AV club, and they're talking about this like ham radio thing that they can talk all the way across the the world or whatever, like with this AV thing, and they're like super, oh my god, the teacher is so cool. Which, I mean, not really. His name is Scott Clark, or Mr. Clark, and he's a huge nerd. We don't really see much of him throughout the first couple seasons. We see more of him in season 3. But yeah, he's we see him every like now and again, but he's like the nerdy like solution finder, air quotes. He's the person that's like, oh, you like, it's theoretically possible to like punch through dimensions and that kind of shit. Like, he's that guy. But they're all called to the office and are being asked about Will's disappearance, and they are told not to investigate for their own safety, but they fucking do anyway. But the kids like know nothing about it because they were under the impression that Will made it home. They had no idea. Joyce goes looking around for Will in a bunch of other places. There's like a little fort out behind, or out in the woods, Castle Byers, because Will's last name is Byers. And she goes looking around there, and she's like, she starts remembering like taking him to go see Poltergeist and shit. Which is kind of the like, hey, nudge nudge, my child is disappeared into this weird alternate dimension and can communicate with me in certain, like, it parallels parts of Poltergeist in that storyline. There's a ton of references throughout Stranger Things. Each season has like movies from the like era that it's talking about. So this is like 83? So all of the things that happen here are like movies that happened in 83. So you have like It and Poltergeist and that sort of thing. But it cuts back to the restaurant owner and the girl, and he is asking for her name while she's eating, and he notices that she's got a tattoo that says 011, and he calls her 11, or he asks for her name and she says 11, and yeah, so he calls the police, and lets them know, like, whatever, but the phones are tapped, so Hawkins' lab knows now that, like, 11 is in this restaurant. But she, like, looks at a fan, and it's making a noise, and it's annoying her, so she thinks about it, and she, like, stares at it, and the fan stops.
Oh, so she's got, like, psychic powers or something.
Yes. That is, like, our first foray into this girl not right. Hopper and the rest of the police or the search team find Will's bike, and they're letting him know, like, hey, we found his bike, maybe Lonnie, which is his dad, took him or something, and they try and get a hold of him, but he doesn't answer. So so she calls a bunch of people, blah blah blah, but Hopper starts looking around the house and realizes that Will came home, because the family dog is looking at the shed, and he looks around and he finds something behind a shelf, and the light blinking until, like, the light blinks on and off, and then when the deputies comes in and it stops, and it scares Hopper, and he's like, okay, we're gonna start a search party. Mike starts fighting with his family about wanting to search for Will, but they all say no, and he gets pissed off and runs off. Hopper, Mr. Clark, and everybody start looking around, and Mr. Clark mentioned something about Sarah, who was Hopper's daughter, who died before all of this happened. It's presumed that she died of cancer. But Clark is informed that her daughter died long ago, and like, Hopper had mentioned that, like, she lives with her mom in the city, which is implying that they're both dead and buried in the same place. Mike and Lucas have a conversation over their radios, and Mike says something that Will might have put himself in danger to protect everybody, so he runs. So they all, like, decide that they're going to go out in the middle of the night and start looking for Will. They start heading out, and they run into before that, so your boy, there's a lady named Agent Connie Fraser who comes to the door, and she tells them, like, hey, I'm from social services, I'm here to take the girl that you found, and he lets her in, and they're talking. 11 is from the back, and she sees the lady come in and, like, freaks out, and the woman shoots the owner in the back of the head,
God damn it!
And 11 bolts off into the night.
Wait, how far in the series are we?
This is the first episode.
Okay. Okay. Well, all right, great. Okay.
Yeah, like
Let's
she
continue.
shoots him in the back of the head, kills him, and 11 goes running off into the night. She then kills 11 kills 2 agents and then runs through the back door. Just using her mind powers. But I think so. But yeah, so she she runs off, and the social services lady makes it look like a suicide. She writes like a suicide note and makes it look like he killed himself.
There goes my favorite character.
Yep, that's first episode. Dustin, Lucas, and Mike are going down the road. A road called Mirkwood. I don't know why I remember that name. But they head into a restricted area of the woods. So they they start going off on their search party. And then you have Steve and Nancy, who are off studying, doing their thing and talking about like sex and shit. Joyce and Jonathan are back home being like real upset and mourning over Will's disappearance. Joyce gets a mysterious phone call, and she hears what she thinks is Will through a bunch of static. And she starts screaming like, "What have you done to my boy?" And there's like weird like electrical interference, and it zaps her and it fries the phone. And she starts like crying and freaking out because, she swears she heard Will. Dustin, Lucas, and Mike continue to start looking around, and they come across 11. And this is when they meet one another. That's like the end of the first episode. It's like they see her and they're like, whoa, and then it like cuts. But so 11 they take her to Mike's house and hide her in the basement. And they ask her like a whole bunch of questions, but she's all scared and cold. And so oh my god. She tries to like change her clothes, but the boys are like, ooh, gross girl. But Mike allows her to have, or offers her like a sleeping bag and makes her like a little fort and shit, and like calls her Elle, and then everybody goes to sleep. The next day, Joyce and Jonathan are making posters for Will. Hopper shows up and tells them that like we still haven't found him. She tells them about the phone call. They say that like maybe it was a prank or some shit. Who knows? They try to get a hold of Lonnie. Or they talk about getting a hold of Lonnie, or Jonathan's talking about getting a hold of Lonnie or whatever. And she's like, no, don't do that. And yeah, Mike, Mike is trying to get Elle to help, but she says that she can't because bad people want to kill her. The lab listens in on Joyce's 911 call. There is a whole bunch of shit that happens about like Nancy and Steve, but who cares? Dustin and Lucas go to school. They don't see Mike. He's staying at home and looking after Elle. Jonathan is being all stoic and listening to Should I Stay or Should I Go, because that was like a song that they listened to before, and it's real sad. Then Joyce gets a new phone. A handyman who is actually an agent for the lab verifies that the buyers are not home, and they see an ooze dripping from the shed's walls. But Elle keeps having like these weird flashbacks to being in the lab, and she calls Brenner Papa a lot, and it's real weird. But she does recognize Will when Mike shows 11 a picture of him. Joyce gets her new phone, tries to wait for another call. Hopper is investigating your boy's death, and realizes that he wouldn't have killed himself, and that there's no way that he killed himself in the way that he was killed.
So he shoot himself 5 times in the head.
Jonathan drives to Lonnie's house, and Will's not there, but Lonnie's drunk, and Jonathan's pissed off, and he gives him the missing poster for Will. Lucas and Dustin attempt to tell Karen, which is Mike's mom, about Elle after finding out he spent all day with her, but yeah, like Elle slams the door and like locks it, and kind of shows that she has psychokinesis. Hopper goes to the station, talks to a customer that was there when 11 showed up, but yeah, he doesn't confirm that it was anything other than a suicide. He gives information on Elle, which Hopper thinks might be Will instead. The Wheeler family has dinner with Dustin and Lucas. They're all acting weird because they have information. Elle walks by. Karen hears something. Dustin fakes a spasm to draw attention away. And then there's a search party for Will. And they find the tag of Elle's hospital gown in one of the laboratory's drain pipes. And they find the fence to the lab. Elle keeps playing with Mike's radio and shit. Mike tells her what the definition of a friend is. Barb and Nancy arrive at Steve's house, but Barb is suspicious since 2 of Steve's air quotes friends had sex in 7th grade. This is an important bit of the story because Barb and Nancy are going to like a party thing, and they're not supposed to. Whatever.
Gay, rebellious teen.
This part is super important. So remember that they're going to a party they're not supposed to be at. The last missing person was the summer of 23, and the last suicide was the fall of 61. So they were both long ago. Crime doesn't happen in this town is essentially what it's implying. Elle tells them that Will is somewhere else, hiding from something terrible. And the way that she shows them that is she uses the Demogorgon figure, the mini. So that's why the monster in Stranger Things is called the Demogorgon.
Okay.
Jonathan is out taking pictures of the scene near where Will's bike. He hears screaming and runs to find Steve and the others drinking and swimming. He takes a bunch of pictures of Nancy and Steve going at it. Joyce then gets another call from Will, but it shorts again. Should I stay or should I go? Starts playing in the house. Joyce believes it's a message encountering something trying to go through the wall. She sees like a face like pushing itself through the wall. But it pops back in when music plays. Barb is being pressured to like shotgun a beer, and so she takes a pocket knife and stabs it, and cuts her hand.
Wait, hold on. She was pressured into a beer, so she stabs the beer?
A shotgun. Do you know what shotgunning a beer is? You like stab the side of the can.
Yeah, but you didn't say she was shotgunning.
She was gonna shotgun a beer, so she stabbed the side of the can and was gonna like crack the top open and like shotgun it. But she accidentally cuts her hand. And there's like a drop of blood in the water or whatever. And the other kids go inside and they're all like having sex and shit. And she's outside by herself, like at the pool. And she hears something. And all of a sudden she's grabbed out of like nowhere, and then the scene like she screams for Nancy, but there's like, you know, she's not there anymore. She wakes up in a place that is almost exactly the pool, but there's no water in it. Everything's covered in that black root and fleshy substance from before, and everything's cold. She tries to call up or like get out of the pool, like up the ladder, but she is like grabbed and pulled back into the pool, and she's like screaming for Nancy, like screaming bloody murder for Nancy. And Nancy hears something, but Barb is like no longer in like this dimension, so
yeah.
And the thing that has appeared to like drag her down is a like weird abnormal looking like humanoid that has like long gangly arms, and
is it that flower face thing?
Yes, that
okay,
is
so that's what...
that is the Demogorgon.
Oh, so that's the demo. Okay.
Yes.
What the fuck is this thing?
That monster is referred to as the Demogorgon. The weird flower face thing. That is it. But it drags Barb into the thing. And spoilers, she dies. It kills her.
Well...
It is real sad, and every time I watch that scene, I cry. Because Barb deserved fucking better than that. And it is bullshit that she died, but the reason that she died is because she was the one. So while Nancy and while everyone else are like having sex or whatever, and you know, that's the horror movie rules, Barb is the one who steps outside of her comfort zone and like gives into peer pressure, and so that's why she's the one who dies, and it sucks. I love Barb.
I guess that's horror movie rules, but it's like, well, not really. The sex, you people with sex usually die first, not the people who step out of the comfort zone. They die.
No, but so Barb like doesn't have anybody there to have sex with, but A, she cuts her hand. And the Demogorgon smells blood. That's why he went over after Will. But B, she's the one out of all of them that like gave into peer pressure and like shotgun to beer. And it's always drugs and sex are the ones that like get killed. Horror movie rules. But anyway, she dies. It's real sad. I cry every time. Nancy realizes she's late and she'll get home with her mom. So so she leaves. She does get in trouble with her mom. But she's just like, nothing happened. And then she like runs off to her room. Jonathan, after trying to communicate, because Joyce is losing her goddamn mind at this point and has put up lights on the wall and an alphabet underneath it, almost like a weird Ouija board in a way, but it's Christmas lights strung up across the wall, and each light corresponds to a letter of the alphabet. So she's got like A, B, C, D written underneath it. Jonathan tries to communicate with Will via lights, and Joyce. Jonathan tells her to stop. Dustin, Mike, and Lucas go out to go, are prepping to go look for Will again. Before they leave, Mike tells Elle to be there at 3:15, like 3:15, but she knows it as 3:15 on the clock. Hopper, during the morning and afternoon, goes to Hawkins' lab. After an incident, is led in to investigate the drain via security tapes. Unsuccessfully, Elle is watching a Coke commercial and has like a flashback to the lab where she's like crushing a Coke can with her psychokinesis. But yeah, so anyway, Joyce does the like thing with the Christmas lights, and sets up this like big intricate system to indicate Will's position, but she runs out of lights, so she goes and buys a ton more at the store. And so her whole house is just strung up with Christmas lights. Hopper's convinced that the lab is lying, as there was rainy weather and that didn't show on the tape. Brenner and the other people send a man through the fleshy substance in the laboratory, which is a portal to the Upside Down, which is what that other dimension is called, which is the coolest fucking name for anything ever. I want to go to the Upside Down.
Sounds like some animation studios like My Neighbor Totoro and that shit. Like that sounds like something from there, like the Upside Down.
Yes, but I mean, the Upside Down is so cool. Like it's all cold and like the aesthetic is so cool, and like I wish it was a real place because I would visit that shit. But I mean, obviously, I don't want to die, but I would love to go to the Upside Down. It'd be fucking cool.
Oh man, that'd be so cool. Except you'd fucking die. Okay, let's continue.
Anyway, the guy going through the portal is like documenting by what he sees, but then he's killed and there's only like a bloody tether left. Jonathan takes a bunch or enlarges some of the pictures that he took, and is noticed by one of Steve's friends, and they like ambush him and rip up all of his pictures and shit and break his camera. Karen visits Joyce for dinner, but Holly is one of his Mike's other sisters. She's like 3. Sees the lights leading into Will's room, where the like monster is trying to enter. Hopper researches anything related to Hawkins' lab. And Nancy freaks out worrying about Barbara's disappearance and calls Barb's mom. to let her know.
Real quick, why can't this creature, Demogorgon, just enter the world?
It can. So it has the ability to like rip open portals into our world. The theory, I mean, I'll get into this a little bit more later, but the theory is that, at least my personal theory about the Upside Down, is that it was created when an event later in the series happens, and I will go back to that later.
Right.
And it just creates like an exact copy of like Hawkins at that moment, but it can like hop between the two.
It just seemed I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, because I thought I was listening, and I just wanted to make sure, like, oh, it can only enter through like this or this, like, and each are different. But it just seems to be able to hop randomly around.
Yes, it can create it can create its own portals between the two, which comes into play a little bit later because there's a ton of these fucking portals all over Hawkins. But yeah. Anyway, Elle has a flashback to being strapped to a machine, told to like kill a cat, and she refuses. She's about to be locked away, and she slams one guard against the wall and kills another, like snapping the other guy's neck. Brenner sees and calls it, air quotes, incredible. And that's like the end of that flashback. Elle meets up with Lucas, Dustin, and Mike, as they said before, and they go to try and find Will again. Mike tries to bond with Elle, telling her about Troy, which is one of the bullies, tripping him. Nancy finds Barbara's car and goes to Steve's house, and comes across the creature, and escapes. She very narrowly escapes. Joyce, back at home, finds Christmas lights leading her to a like hidden drawer. She grabs a set of unplugged Christmas lights and asks, Will, are you here? And they glow mysteriously once. She tells him to blink the lights once for yes or twice for no, asking him, are you alive? To which they blink once. Then she asks, are you safe? To which they blink twice. And then the connection to Will is lost. The lights don't blink anymore. And she, the alphabet thing, whatever. Hopper is searching through the laboratory with another deputy, finding out that the laboratory is CIA sanctioned, and being they're being called to the library, finding out that, or no, to the quarry, that's what it is. And just about the same time, Elle takes the trio to Will's house, stating that he's hiding there, and they all turn on her and say that she's lying, but Dustin sees a police cruiser and an ambulance is following them. Joyce asks Will where he is, and the lights slowly spelled out the sentence right here. Joyce is confused and scared. Obviously. She asks Will what she should do to find him, and the letters spell out RUN. And the monster enters the house, and Joyce sees it breaking through the wallpaper and fucks out. She's like, no, bye. Dustin, Elle, Lucas, and Mike follow the cops, and they head to the quarry. Joyce runs into Jonathan. Mike then snaps at Elle for lying, saying that, she's lying, that there's no way he's there. And Will is pulled out of the water, dead.
Oh no.
But it's not Will. It's not really Will. So Hopper and everybody don't think that it's legit. Joyce also refuses to believe that it's Will. She's like, I've talked to Will. I know that Will is alive. He's not dead. This is some kind of sick joke. This isn't real. Joyce describes to Hopper what she saw of the fucking Demogorgon, and how it didn't have a face and everything. And Hopper thinks that she's experiencing grief and tells her about whenever Sarah died. And Joyce is like, this is irrelevant. That's not it. He tells Joyce to get some sleep. And instead, and he tells her to go look at Will's body in the morgue. And she says no. And she gets an axe and she stays awake all night.
I mean, grieving mother, whatever, but come on, guys. We've seen some weird shit, so let's go.
Yes. Mike's pissed at Elle over Will being brought out of the thing and says that she did something that sucks, air quotes, and that Lucas was right about her all along. However, she tunes the radio to Will's presence, being able to hear but not speak to him, and hears him singing. But it's very brief, and it proves that Will is alive. Jonathan leaves at the side of Will. Joyce asks for proof of the birthmark on his right arm, cutting to Hopper. Hopper ensures that Jonathan and Joyce will be fine, and everything will be all right. Joyce walks out, refusing to sign the documents that Will is dead. Jonathan then yells at her that Will is dead, parting ways after an audience appears. Nancy tells Steve that she wants to go back to look for Barbara, but doesn't work. She also talks about the monster that had no face, same as Joyce's description. Steve is worried about his accusation by his parents, while Nancy is focused on Barbara. She then leaves, pissed off. Elle keeps tuning into Will, but he sounds different. Everyone decides to disguise Elle to get her to Mr. Clark's Heathkit, the ham radio. Nancy is interrogated by Hopper, and she gives false information that was verified by the police, or whatever. The trio take Elle to school, sneak her into Mr. Clark's room, but they're discovered by him. He talks to the kids and negotiates some sort of deal with them, because they're trying to find Will. Mike sees Troy laughing at the assembly thing for Will during the funeral, and confronts him and pushes him. However, before Troy can do anything to hit back, he's stopped by Elle, and she makes Troy pee on himself in front of the entire school.
I'm sure that will have no repercussions later on.
I mean, it doesn't really. Nancy discovers that the monster is on one of Jonathan's ripped photographs, and she shows it to him, and Jonathan realizes that that's what his mother was talking about. Hopper then interrogates the man who found Will, saying that someone didn't want anybody to get too close to the body. Elle goes to the Heathkit, and she remembers from the lab that she was told to listen to a certain man with her own mind, and so she focuses in on Will or whatever. Joyce hacks at the hole in her house and frequently tries like tries to like find where like the thing was coming in. But yeah, the so the whole thing with the like pictures and everything, all of that's happening like simultaneously. So like Nancy and Jonathan are looking at these pictures. Joyce is like chopping down her fucking house, and the kids are trying to listen in on Will. And then Lonnie shows up at Joyce's house and is blaming Joyce for their missing kid.
Wait, why?
Yeah. Because Jonathan showed up and was like, "Hey, like our kid, you're a bitch because you're not trying to look for your fucking son." And then Lonnie shows up drunk at their house and is like blaming Joyce for losing their kid, and is like, "Well, you should have never had access or like custody of him because look at how irresponsible you are." Essentially,
you know, rational people. Okay, sorry, I was going to get very ragey about this. Let's
yes,
continue.
yes, exactly. Lucas, Dustin, and Mike talk about Will's, you know, whole thing, and they lead towards like Elle's talking about like the board being upside down, and they kind of figure out that Will is trapped in the upside down, which is sort of like what is the thing in I'm drunk and I can't remember. What's the thing in Dungeons and Dragons? It's a dimension. You have like the Feywild and you have the Shadowfell. It's like the Shadowfell. Okay. That's the word I was looking for. It's like the Shadowfell. It is literally like a twisted, fucked up copy of the real world. Anyway, Hopper finds out that his house is fucking bugged. So there's like he finds like microphones and shit hidden all over his house. Anyway, Jonathan and Nancy grab a revolver from a car at the funeral, and Dustin, Lucas, and Mike ask Mr. Clark about interdimensional travel, and he's like, he gives the flea and the acrobat theory. An acrobat on a tightrope can go forward and backward, but a flea can go at the same time, or go the same but sideways and upside down. And that a gateway could be created by using a ton of energy to rip a hole in space-time, essentially.
That's very intuitive. You know what? Suspension disbelief, we'll go with it. Okay.
But yes, he talks about how it's like theoretically possible, whatever. Lonnie takes down all the Christmas lights and boards up the hole at the house. Dustin discovers that compasses aren't pointing true north anymore, that they are being disrupted by energy at the lab. So there's an immense amount of energy happening, and compasses aren't pointing the right way anymore.
So our theory right now that I don't know is that the lab is trying to investigate this creature, but they're doing a shit job at it.
Kind of. So this is when my personal theory comes in. Everybody's with Elle, and Elle has a flashback to being in a sensory deprivation tank. And she's being told to collect information on a Russian man. But she's also told later on that like she sees this like weird monster thing in like the sensory deprivation thing, and she pokes it, and and it turns around and scares the shit out of her. My personal theory is that the moment that she contacted this thing, it created an exact copy of Hawkins. Because there are buildings and cars and things in Hawkins. But they're all covered in that, like, fleshy black root shit. But whenever she had, like, physical contact with the monster because she poked it, that created an exact copy of Hawkins.
Okay, but the lab... So, the lab had L, and... Okay, you know what? Let's continue, because I'm going to take up too much time questioning.
Well, they were fascinated by the idea of this, like, monster. They were originally trying to, like... like, spy on the Russians. But they found this monster thing, and were like, oh shit, that's cool as fuck. And so they started pursuing that instead, or research on that instead. And that's why there's a portal to the Upside Down now. That rift only existed when L touched the monster. And so now the monster has access to our world and can portal in whenever it wants to, because these two universes are intrinsically connected to one another because of 11. That's my personal theory. But they all go hang out at a junkyard. Compasses turn back to normal weirdly. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Lucas blames Elle because of her telekinetic abilities. Because she has like a bloody nose. But she admits that they're like not safe. Lucas and Mike get into a fight. And Elle gets mad and knocks Lucas out by sending him flying at a metal plate. And Mike gets mad at her for doing it. She runs away. Let's see. Nancy, I'm looking through my notes. Nancy is going through the woods with Jonathan. She hears something, but they find a wounded deer. It looks like it's been possibly hit by a car, and it's whimpering in pain. Jonathan loads a gun to euthanize the deer, but it is dragged away by the monster. They find a trail of blood left by the deer. However, Nancy tracks it to a separate gate under a tree. And she crawls into it. Let's talk about this for a moment. Nancy sees this weird fleshy tube under a tree, and she's like, let me just crawl into this real quick.
I feel like I want to ask questions, but I feel like it's going to be because the dumb. Basically, like, it's just like, why do you throw him against the wall? Because the dumb.
I mean, yeah.
So just why are you blaming him for? He was thrust in the corner because the dumb.
But so Nancy goes into the Upside Down. But as she backs away, she steps on a root and it attracts the creature, and she screams. And the gate closes. Like Jonathan can't find her because the gate's closing. And at the last second, Nancy is pulled out by Jonathan. Like right before the monster can get her. And there's a ton of like near-death experiences that this bitch has throughout the story. Steve goes to Nancy's house, and as he climbs her window, Steve sees Jonathan putting a towel on Nancy and comforting her. And he's like, oh, Nancy's cheating on me. So Nancy's scared, and Jonathan's trying to keep her like sane. And they're both like sleep deprived. But yeah, so Mike is upset, and kicks in like Elle's spot in the basement. Hopper tracks down Terry, the woman who claims to have her daughter taken, which is Eleven's mom. And she lives in like Illinois. This whole thing takes place in Indiana, Hawkins, Indiana, and she lives in Illinois, like in a home. So he goes and checks in on her. She doesn't really get any information from her. But yeah, so Elle makes her contact thing, like with the thing. She goes to a grocery store and steals a whole bunch of Eggos. And everybody's like running after her, being like, "You can't steal those!" And then she like slams the door with her mind. Joyce and Hopper go to Terry's home, and she's fixated on a small TV. Her sister explains that she studied in MK Ultra training at the laboratory in the 50s. And she would be drugged, stripped, and put in isolation tanks, sensory deprivation ones, to try and improve the brain's functions. She apparently miscarried a daughter in the 3rd trimester. Terry imagined her as Jane, a beautiful dollar with abilities matching Eleven's, revealing that she was captured by Brenner, who faked her death, and Terry's sister, which Terry's sister completely believes.
All right, then.
Lucas arrives at Hawkins' lab. He takes his bike on the left for open space or whatever. Nancy and Jonathan start stocking up on weapons and traps. The cashier asks them, like, "What are you kids gonna do with all this?" And Nancy goes, "Monster hunting." Like, straight up.
Well, as long as you're paying, it's fine.
They start.
Pause. So we're not done. This is still season 1, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 3:07. We started around 2:15.
Yeah, we're at an hour and 1
do
minute.
Season 1. Okay, so
we're almost
like,
done with season 1.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's probably gonna go season 1, season 2 then. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, and 3, 2, 1, and we'll continue.
Okay. Steve writes on a movie theater that all the right moves, starring Nancy the Slut Wheeler, like spray painted on a movie theater, because he's like real pissed off because he thinks that she's cheating on him. Let's see. Elle is in the woods. Mike and Dustin are calling out for her, trying to find her. They spot Troy with a knife. Troy is like literally like coming after the kids with a knife. Lucas finds the compass needle pointed in the general direction of a tree. He climbs up it and, using binoculars, spots the gate, but finding 3 men entering it in an armed vehicle, as well as a bunch of handyman vehicles that say Hawkins Power and Light. At the same time, Mike and Dustin run up a cliff above the quarry, trying to defend themselves. Dustin is being held captive by Troy, threatening Mike that he will cut out Dustin's teeth with the knife as he jumps off the cliff into the quarry. Mike, under pressure from Troy, jumps off the cliff, but Elle like uses her telekinesis to put him back, and she pushes Troy's accomplice and breaks Troy's arm, and then she collapses. Mike and Elle leave, but an agent disguised as a handyman in a truck tells the laboratory that he found them, and they start following after like everybody. Lucas realizes the agents are going towards Mike's home, as Mike, Dustin, and Elle arrive. So they all start like heading out and running away because these people are trying to take Elle. Hopper and Joyce go to the police department. I'm trying to skip some things that really aren't important. Because I made a bunch of notes before I was, like, when I was sober, and I'm trying to, like, be like, that's not really important. Let's see. Let's see. They all flee to the junkyard, essentially. Also, by the way, this happened before, and I forgot to mention it completely. Hopper was suspicious about everything that's going on, so he went into the like place where they were keeping Will's body, air quotes, and like stabbed it and cut it open, and it was a doll filled with like fucking polyfill. It was placed there by the lab because they were just trying to be like, oh, look, he died, because they know where he is.
Yeah.
So they were trying to cover it up. Anyway, let's see. Dustin spots a helicopter in their direction, and they hide their bikes. There's a really cool part where, like, it's almost like fucking E.T. So you have, like, all these kids on bikes, and Eleven, like, flips a car with her mind, and it's like she's in, like, a hoodie and she's covered or whatever. Like, it's literally an E.T. reference. So yeah, Jonathan gives information about the picture of the monster. Joyce is angry at him because of it, and they like reconcile. Hopper is here's like a fight between Troy's mother and a deputy, saying that like this kid like broke her son's arm or whatever. Steve has like a weird gnarly scar on his face now, and he hears gossip about Nancy and Jonathan, and confronts Carol and Tommy and tells them that, like, you know, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, you're shitheads. Hopper and oh my god, let me get Daisy to stop.
You want to take like a 5-minute break or something? Need some water?
No, I'm good. I just need Daisy to stop rolling around behind me.
Oh, Daisy!
Stop.
Daisy, you tell me about it. Come on.
She's like wallowing all over my bed. Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. Hopper and Joyce get Nancy and Jonathan to help find Mike, Dustin, and Lucas, and Elle, and they try to gather as much information about the monster as they can. Dustin, Mike, and Lucas discuss to one another that if they're actually caught up with the bad guys or not, and Mike's like, no. Steve goes to the theater where they deface the sign and asks to help get rid of the thing. Karen and everybody try to find Mike, despite the agent Fraser is at their house and tells them like to stay. Dustin is in the bus with the other three at the like junkyard, and tells them he doesn't have a good feeling, and they see some cars pull up with 3 armed agents, and they decide to hide and stay still, but one of them notices that the bikes that are under the bus, and they start to open the door, and is knocked out by fucking Hopper. Joyce, Jonathan, and everybody are at the Byers' residence when Hopper returns with Lucas, Mike, and Elle. Mike tells him the theory about the like flea and the acrobat, and he concludes telling him about the gate, and that it interferes with the Earth's electromagnetic field and compasses. Nancy and Joyce both look at 11 to find Will and Barbara in the Upside Down, but she can't find them. The comm radio they are using is too small to track them, but then the 3 of them ask if there's another way, and she immediately sees a bathtub in the bathroom while she is there, and she tells them about the like sensory deprivation thing. Dustin calls Mr. Clark to get information on sensory deprivation tanks and the list of materials that they'll need. So they start getting things like de-icing salt from the middle school, a kiddie pool, that kind of thing. Hoses and that sort of thing to like fill it up with water, all that kind of shit. Mike fills up the pool with lukewarm water. Lucas sets the temperature for lukewarm. Jonathan and Hopper dump the de-icing salt into the bath. Dustin tests the density of the water with eggs. Elle is placed in, and she finds Barbara's corpse, which is sad. Nancy asks if Barbara's okay, and Elle yells "gone" numerous times, scared. She finds Castle Byers in the Upside Down, and finds Will cold and frightened on the bed. She relays the message to Joyce that Will that they are coming to find you and to hold on. And then Will disappears from the astral region to Elle's whimpering as she wakes up in the bath crying and scared. Hopper gives information about Castle Byers, or gets information about Castle Byers from Joyce and Jonathan, and goes to leave to like check on it. Joyce worries about Will and his welfare and state of being, goes along with him, despite Hopper's warning. Jonathan is told not to go by Hopper, as well as Joyce, but him and Nancy decide to sneak out of the building and get supplies from the station. They go to the police station and steal a bunch of army supplies, as well as a fire extinguisher.
Just, okay, that's not locked up anywhere.
They cut the fence into the way into the lab, and they break into the Upside Down, essentially. And as they surrender and are handcuffed in the Upside Down, Will is singing to himself, "Should I stay or should I go?" quietly as he shivers in Castle Byers, and the monster growls and destroys the fort and carries Will off somewhere. Joyce and Hopper break into the lab, and Joyce is handcuffed to a chair parallel to another chair on a metal table in an interrogation room. She screams to be let out, and Brenner arrives and interrogates Joyce as to the location of Elle and being in contact with Will. Blah, blah, blah. Hopper, however, is tasered repeatedly into leaking out his knowledge of the lab, led by Agent Connie Frazier.
That bitch.
He reveals about the experience objectives. He knows that they killed Benny Hammond. The faking of Will's death. That they scuffed up their tracks, and he negotiates a deal with them to let Joyce go and get her the supplies needed to find Will and bury the hatchet. Like, if they he won't report them or whatever the fuck. Dustin, Lucas, Mike, and Elle are waiting at the gym at the school with Elle wrapped in a towel. Mike goes out the door to look for Nancy and Jonathan, finding Jonathan's car gone. He tells the trio, and Elle reveals that they are going to fight the monster. At the Byers' residence, Nancy and Jonathan extensively set up a crude trap layout, laying down gasoline, bear traps, blah, blah, blah. Jonathan hammers a bunch of nails into a baseball bat, that kind of thing.
Yes, because the army supplies won't do it. But yes, baseball bats with nails.
Yes. Brenner gives some hazmat suits to both Joyce and to Hopper, and tells them about that they'll probably die, essentially. Brenner is hoping that they'll die. But yeah. He goes armed and heads to Hawkins Middle School. Hopper and Joyce are breathing heavily about because in Upside Down it's hard to breathe. And they start heading in to try and find Will. Back at the Byers' house, Jonathan and Nancy cut their hands with kitchen knives to attract the monster. And they head to Will's room and not move until the monster steps in any traps. And then Jonathan will set the thing on fire. Nancy and Jonathan bandage up their hands and talk to one another when Steve shows up at the door. And Nancy opens it, trying to close him out by telling him there's danger, but he enters anyway, seeing Nancy's hand. Confused by the trap set up, Jonathan tells him to leave, but Nancy grabs the revolver and aims it at Steve, ordering him to get out. The Christmas lights start to blink, and the monster breaks in through the ceiling, scaring Steve because this is the first time Steve has seen the monster. And they go and barricade themselves in Will's room. Jonathan holds the lighter while the monster passes. However, the electricity jolts and leaves the monster nowhere to be seen. Hopper and Joyce keep searching through the Upside Down. They find in the Upside Down versions of the Hawkins Forest, they find a broken egg. They come across Castle Byers, which is destroyed by the monster. Looking at a stuffed tiger, Hopper starts thinking about his daughter again. And then he snaps out of it, hearing Joyce trying to call to him. Back at the Byers' house, Steve is freaked out, trying to call somebody, but Nancy grabs the phone from him and is like, "What the fuck are you gonna call?" He leaves out the front door, fumbling to get his keys to his car, but he sees the lights pulsating. And the monster pins Jonathan down, but Nancy shoots the monster, but there's literally no fucking effect. It doesn't do anything. It just
He was surprised.
it just like makes him pissed off. So it starts stomping towards Nancy, but Steve shows up, grabs the baseball bat, and knocks it, knocks the monster into the bear trap that they had set up. And then Jonathan lights the trail of gasoline and lights it on fire. In the Upside Down, Hopper and Joyce hear the monster screams and follow it. Jonathan puts out the fire, but the monster's not there anymore. And they think that it's dead. But they can see the Christmas lights lighting up to show where Hopper and Joyce are. They leave. Trio walk outside to see a streetlight blinking. Nancy, relating it to the monster, asks where it's going. Jonathan replies that it's not the monster. Dustin and Lucas are back at the school, and they see the agents parked outside looking for them. Hopper and Joyce continue looking through the upside down version of Hawkins, and they see a building with a massive amount of black roots and fleshy tendrils, which they assume, or which is the monster's nest, and they go inside because they know what it is, they know what the building is. Brenner encounters everyone, and the agents restrain Dustin, Lucas, and Mike. He then sits near Elle and picks her up, being unable to move, but she can talk. He tells her that he can take her home to the laboratory where they can make her better and that no casualties will happen. Elle realizes that she's being used, and Mike notices a large amount of blood on the floor from Fraser's agents. Realizing it can detect blood, the monster enters through the hall or through the wall and starts killing everybody. And it kills Brenner and everybody else, and they're all running away because there's a fucking monster. So everybody pieces out. Hopper and Joyce find Will. He's got this weird thing stuck to his face. And it seems to be a weird slug tube thing. And while searching through the bodies, they find some eaten and some alive but completely drained of life. Joyce, looking for Will, finds him with that weird tube down his throat, all alien style. Hopper takes out the slug-like creature and shoots it. Dustin, Mike, and Lucas are in a classroom. They take Elle to a desk where she can chill out for a little bit. Mike consoles her by reminding her that she can live with him when this is all over, and she asks promise, and Mike promises. The monster kills the rest of the agents and breaks into the classroom. Lucas arms himself with a slingshot, shooting projectiles at it with no effect. The fourth time he shoots, and this is a fucking It style slingshot. It's a the fourth time he shoots it, Elle knocks it back using her telepathy, and Mike begs her to stop, but she pushes him back with telekinesis, and she turns to him and says, "Goodbye, Mike," and then she proceeds to kill the monster and then also disappear herself. Mike yells, Mike yells for her, but she's not there. But yeah, Hopper and Joyce bring Will out of the Upside Down. He's in the hospital for a while, and then he wakes up. On Christmas Eve, Will is playing Dungeons and Dragons with everybody, and they come across the Thistle Hydra. Oh no!
Oh no!
But he rolls a 14 and casts a fireball. So, everybody cheers and they celebrate and everything. And later, they're like having their Christmas dinner or whatever, and Will is in the bathroom and he doesn't really feel too good, and he starts coughing, and coughs up this like weird slug thing into the sink
to prove it's not over yet.
And everything like flickers around him, and he's in the Upside Down again, and then it flickers back to normal. And he turns the faucet off slowly, and then he goes back to the table, and Joyce is like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And then they proceed to talk about D&D, and that's the end of the first season. So season 2 starts in Pittsburgh instead of Hawkins.
What a jump!
There's a bunch of kids that are like, they kill a man, and they're like fleeing off in a van, and they're being chased by police, and the group goes into a tunnel, and rocks fall which block the opening, and it's revealed that the rocks were a vision in the mind of the lead policeman. Back in the van, there's a girl named Callie, a member of the like criminal gang, and she's bleeding from her left nostril, and she has a tattoo marked 008 on her wrist.
Oh, shit.
So, back in Hawkins, the kids are like going to an arcade, and they find that somebody named Mad Max has beaten the high score of Dig Dug. And Will experiences an episode where he finds himself in the Upside Down version of the arcade. He sees this like large like shadow monster in the sky. I'm sure you've probably seen images of that at some point, but it's like this big like thing that's in the sky. It looks really creepy. And the next day they end up meeting a new student from California named Max, who Lucas is like immediately like, I love this girl. Same with Dustin. Dustin's crushing on her hard, but Dustin believes that she is the Mad Max from the arcade, but Lucas is like, nah, girls can't play video games.
Yeah, let's...
Yeah. Takes place in the 80s. Anyway, Max's stepbrother, Billy, arrives at Hawkins High, and he's sort of like competing with Steve for the title of king of the school. Billy is sort of an important character later, so he's really not really super intensive right now, but whatever. Will keeps having his weird episodes, and he's taken by Joyce and Hopper to Hawkins' lab, where he's seen by Dr. Owens, the new head scientist since Brenner died. And he's a good guy. Joyce has been seeing a man named Bob Newby, a classmate from high school and the manager of the local Radio Shack. And they're getting it on all the time. Nancy and Steve have been having regular dinners with the Holland family following Barb's death. Nancy is still grieving Barb's death, but she learns that the Hollands are completely unaware of Barb's death are selling their house to afford to pay an investigative journalist named Murray Bowman to find Barb. Now Murray is going to be important in the third season, but you know he's fun in this one too. Nancy feels bad about everything and feels real guilty. Mike's been trying to contact 11 for 352 days in a row after her disappearance and has been completely unsuccessful.
Like, does he have a chart to let him, like, you know?
He's been recording, being like, 11, this is like day 352, blah, 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 yeah. Later, Hopper goes to a cabin in the woods where it's revealed that he found 11. And she's in this little cabin. There's a bunch of flashbacks that show that after she kills the Demogorgon, 11 turned up in the Upside Down, and she escaped through a portal and goes to see Mike at the Wheeler's house, but flees into the woods after seeing government agents there. We also see that Hopper finds her and sets up his grandfather's hunting cabin as a place for them both to live. Back in the real world and in the real time, 11 wants to go trick-or-treating, but Hopper is like, no, it's too dangerous, and he is called to a pumpkin patch after reports of weird rotting pumpkins. Nancy is conflicted about telling the Hovlands the truth about their daughter's death, but is persuaded out of it by Steve. They attend a Halloween party, and Nancy gets drunk and berates Steve, putting the blame for Barb's death on him, and says that she doesn't love him. Steve is pissed and upset, and he leaves, and Jonathan finds Nancy and takes her home. Mike, Dustin, Will, everybody go trick-or-treating, and are joined by Max, who was invited by Dustin and Lucas. Will has brought Bob's video camera to record the experience. Will has another episode and tells Mike about the vision and requests that he not tells anybody about it. Mike admits to Will that he has been unsuccessfully trying to communicate with 11. 11 tries to contact Mike, and he, who is also calling her using the supercom from the basement, but it's unsuccessful. Dustin returns home after trick-or-treating to find a small, strange, slug-like creature in his trash can that he determines to be a pollywog.
Does he just call it that? Or why does he think it's a pollywog?
Because it's like this weird, like, frog-like creature. But he names it Dart. And he keeps it as a pet. It's short for D'Artagnan, like from the Three Musketeers, but he calls it Dart. Bob encourages Will to stand up to his fears. Nancy is unable to persuade Jonathan to help her tell Barb's parents the truth. Hopper asks Owens to investigate the pumpkins. Dustin is bringing Dart to school. To like show his teacher or whatever. Will describes his episodes, and the boys conclude Dart is from the Upside Down. Dart escapes from the AV room, and the boys and Max scramble to find him. Mike in the gym gets into an argument with Max, as Mike is angry at Max because Lucas and Dustin want to bring her into the party. Because they're like a ranger and a wizard and blah, 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 and they want to bring her in. 11 leaves the cabin to look for Mike, and interprets Mike's argument as flirting, and she uses her powers to knock Max off of the skateboard and leaves. At the buyer's house, Joyce discovers an image of Will's vision, including a vague outline of the shadow monster. On the video Will recorded while trick-or-treating, like she can see the outline. After seeing the tracing of the outline matches with the picture that Will drew, Joyce goes to the middle school. Will finds Dart, but this triggers another episode where he comes face to face with the big shadow monster. That Will, like, So Bob is like, stand up to your fears. And essentially he's like, I'm not afraid of you to the thing. And the monster like literally forces itself down like Will's throat. Like it starts entering in through his eyes and up his nose and down his throat.
Imagining like, hey, I'm proud of you, buddy.
Yeah, essentially.
It's like, oh wow, that's a great personal achievement. By the way, like, what do you give a fuck about your fucking personal feelings?
Will wakes up from his episode, and Joyce takes him home, but he's starting to act really weirdly. He scribbles on multiple pages. Joyce calls it Hopper, and they find the scribbles line up to form a network of vines. Hopper recognizes an area and leaves. Nancy and Jonathan are arranging a meeting with Barb's mother, and are caught by undercover lab agents. They're taken to a lab where Owen shows the two the gate to the Upside Down and admits that Barb's dead. He tells them they've been tapping phones. And that's how they discovered that Nancy was meeting with Barb's mom, to keep other governments from learning about the portal. When they are released, Nancy reveals that she recorded the confession. At the cabin, Eleven has an argument with Hopper and finds his research into her biological mother, Terry Ives, and attempts to contact her with her powers. Mike is worried about Will, and he goes to check up on him. After requesting Dart and Lucas search for Dart, Hopper goes to the pumpkin patch where he digs a hole and finds that there's a tunnel that leads to the Upside Down. And he becomes trapped, and this thing spurts in his face, and he passes out.
So now the Upside Down is like encroaching on
into the real world. Yes.
Okay. Suspension of disbelief again, just like.
Will sees a vision of Hopper's state, but Joyce can't figure out the meaning of the vision. She enlists Bob for help, as his nickname in high school was Bob the Brain, and he is unable to identify the tunnel, or he is able to identify the tunnels as a map underneath Hawkins, and is roughly able to locate where Hopper is. Lucas is trying to date Max, but Billy wants her to stay away from him because he's black. That's literally the plot point.
Can't have a good show.
It happens.
That old racist.
It happens in the 80s. It's the 80s. At Dustin's house, he finds Dart has broken from his cage and ate his pet cat. Dustin finds Dart is a baby Demogorgon. Because it has like a weird flower face.
More than one now.
Yes, there are many. Nancy and Jonathan go to Murray Bowman with the tape. Murray knows that the public won't accept the story as is with the monsters, but suggests that they water it down. Murray and Nancy decide to change the story to say that Barb died from toxins from the lab. Murray sends the tape to the Chicago Sun-Times, where he was previously employed. Lucas tells the events of last year to Max in an attempt to gain her respect, but she doesn't believe him. Dustin lures Dart to his storm cellar and traps him there. He goes to the Wheeler's house to find any of the boys, even asking for Nancy, but none of them are there. But he runs into Steve, who is coming to apologize to Nancy. And Dustin...
So none of the other kids know about Dart?
Yeah. I mean, they do know about Dart, but they don't know that he literally killed Dustin's cat and is a baby Demogorgon.
I'm just saying, like, they won't accept it with the monster. We literally have a monster right here.
I mean,
like,
that's true.
Why don't we just show this to everyone? Sorry, the 80s, they're dumb.
Dustin enlists Steve for help and tells him to get the bat with the nails.
You mean you don't want the fluffy bat? No, the one with the nails next to the fluffy bat.
Exactly, yeah. They attempt to kill Dart, but instead find that he has shed his skin and dug a tunnel. 11 goes to Terry Ives' house, her mom, and tries to where she's able to communicate with her via her powers. She gains Terry's memories of 11 being taken at birth, and Terry's attempts to rescue her before she was subjected to shock therapy. 11 then finds that there was another girl at the lab that was like her. That would be 8. Bob, Will, and Mike rescue Hopper, but lab personnel arrive and blaze the tunnels with flamethrowers. And when the fire is set, Will screams in agony, and I mean it is like a terrifying wail of agony that will haunt your fucking nightmares.
Good. All right.
Will is rushed to the lab where he kind of has memory loss, unable to remember Bob or Hopper. Owen speculates that the Shadow Monster is likely a virus that has infected Will, and that any damage to the tunnels might be lethal to him. Nancy and Jonathan stay at Murray's and they have sex.
What? I was just gonna. Hey, great job there. That was great. Yeah, they have sex. Okay, back to the intro.
Yeah, back to the interesting part of the story. Dustin and Steve decide to lure Dart to the junkyard, and Dustin calls Lucas for help. Lucas ends up bringing Max and the 4 ready the junkyard to trap Dart. Max opens up to Lucas and explains Billy's attitude is due to her father marrying Max's mother. Dart appears at the junkyard with creatures identical to him, and the group learns that there are packs of them.
Good. All right. So now we know for sure that this thing is spreading.
The group hides in the bus, and Steve attacks them with the bat, but the creatures all run away suddenly, and Steve speculates that they're going somewhere. At the lab, Will views pictures of the map taken by lab agents and points out a location that the Shadow Monster wants to avoid. Owen sends in a team to investigate, but the pack attacks the team and enters the lab, and starts to enter the lab, and they realize that the monster has been using Will as to find out plans, like a spy.
So this thing's become more intelligent. Like in the first season, it was just it heard a sound and attacked people. This time it seems to be learned.
Oh yeah, it's wild. But so 11 goes to Chicago in search of the girl in Terry's memories, who is revealed to be the psychic girl from the events in Pittsburgh, Callie, 8. And she tells 11 that the gang is attempting to kill all the lab scientists who worked under Brenner for what they did. And they go to the home of a lab worker who performed shock therapy on Terry, who claims that Brenner is alive. 11 decides not to kill him after learning that he has kids, and that the gang is forced to flee. 11 has a vision of Mike and Hopper being in grave danger, and she leaves to return to Hawkins. The whole episode that involves everything that I just described to you has no bearing on anything. It's all pointless.
Great, super, excellent.
I mean, the only thing that happens is that 11's powers get more powerful, and that's about it.
Does the episode at all seem that as the Upside Down gets stronger, so does 11? Is that connected to it, or is that just
no?
Me?
She just trains under Callie and the criminals to be able to move a train car and that sort of thing. That's it.
All right.
Oh, and she says bitchin' a lot, and she dresses like a goth kid. That's it. That's all that happens.
All right.
Back at the lab, a bunch of Demodogs, which is what they're called now. Demodogs.
around about their Dimmadome.
Exactly.
Dimmadome.
They overwhelm the lab and kill a ton of the workers. Outside the gate, Nancy and Jonathan have arrived and encounter Steve, Dustin, Lucas, and Max, who have followed the screams of the pack to the lab.
They have the bat, the one with the nails in it.
Yes, they do.
Thank God, that'll save us all.
Mike is able to convince Joyce to sedate Will. Mike, Will, Hopper, Joyce, Bob, and Owens flee to the security room where they are trapped. The power goes out, and Bob, knowing how to reset the power, volunteers to do so. Bob successfully activates the power, and Owens stays behind in the room to guide out the group. Mike, Will, Hopper, and Joyce are able to escape the lobby. Bob makes it to the lobby, but is caught and killed by the pack. So someone, please, for the love of God, help the Byers family, because Joyce literally watches Bob die in front of her. Yeah. The group kind of decides that the shadow monster is a hive mind, and kind of equate it to a mind flayer. Controlling Will and the pack, and if they kill it, its influence on those that it controls will end. Mike, who previously deduced the shadow monster is using Will as a spy, tells the group, who decide to remodel the tool shed so that Will doesn't know where he is, so that they can't, like, the shadow monster can't be like, oh, I know where that is, I'm going to send my shit after him. Will awakens, where Joyce, Jonathan, and Mike share their fondest memories of Will, and attempts to get him to snap out of it, but Will doesn't respond vocally, but he taps out a message in Morse code which reads "close gate." All one word. However, the house phone rings, leading the monster to identify their location. As the pack moves in, the group barricades themselves in the Byers' house. But the pack is surprisingly dispatched by 11, who has returned out of nowhere.
Oh shit, I'm a goblin now!
Mike and 11 get emotional to see each other alive after a year, and they hug one another.
Thank God this didn't happen in, like, our day and age, or she'd be like, some bullshit like that.
Yeah, the group reunites with 11. 11 convinces Hopper that she can close the gate. Mike points out that it may also kill Will. Joyce remembers something Will said about the monster in the lab. He likes it cold, and decides to burn the monster out of him.
Okay.
Yeah, Hopper.
Like, I'm guessing we're not talking with, like, hot sauce and, like, some peppers.
No. Hopper and 11 go to the lab to close the gate. Before she leaves, she promises to Mike that he will not lose her again. Meanwhile, Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy take Will to Hopper's cabin. The group turns on the fire and the heaters and are able to purge the virus from Will after Nancy literally prods him with a hot iron.
Ooh. Like, that's a nice tattoo. How you get it? Internet.
Back at the Byers' house, Mike is concerned about 11 and convinces the group to burn the tendrils at the tunnels to distract the Demodogs from attacking Hopper and 11. Steve rebuffs and says no, but they knock him the fuck out and do it anyway. Back at Billy's house, their dad bitches at him for losing track of Max and sends him to go find her, and that takes him to the Wheeler's house, where Miss Wheeler is, and he kind of seduces her into giving him Joyce's address. He goes there, and after a confrontation with Steve, goes inside and sees Max and Lucas still together. Billy grabs Lucas, but Steve attacks Billy, and they have like a fist fight. Billy ends up knocking Steve unconscious, and Max grabs a syringe that Mike brought from the hospital and injects Billy with it.
Where the fuck did the syringe come from? Like, what medical bullshit? Like, now, hey, kids, don't do drugs.
And she threatens him, like, she injects Billy with it, and Billy's like, what the fuck? And then she takes the spike bat and, like, slams it in between, like, his legs, like, right at his crotch. And is like, leave us the fuck alone. She steals...
Kill your penis.
Max steals Billy's keys, and they steal away into the night. Steve ends up waking up in Billy's car, and Max has driven the group to the tunnels. Steve and the kids enter it, where they cover the heart of the tunnels with gas and ignite it. When the tunnel ignites, the Demodogs like start running towards the tunnels, leaving the lab unguarded. And so Hopper and 11 go in and can close the gate. Meanwhile, while the kids go to leave, they encounter Dart, because he has a very distinctive like pattern on his butt.
Okay.
Dustin is able to like remind him of like, hey, I'm your friend, and gives him like a Three Musketeers, like the candy.
Yeah.
And the group escapes, and literally you watch, like, she closes the gate, like 11 closes the gate, and you watch like Dart die on screen.
Aww.
Oh, it's big sad.
I'm getting some Metroid vibes here. I don't know if you ever played Metroid, but then there's like one time where like, oh hey, it was like confusing at first. You're like, oh, I got this Metroid, and it's my friend now, and it like, sacrifices so you can beat the last boss. And like this, like you kill the last boss, like so, like this motherfucker, you killed my. I haven't even watched it. So it seems like that's kind of vibe you get. Like no.
Yeah. But yeah, so she closes the gate and kills all the monsters. And a month later, the lab has been completely shut down by the government following the publication of Nancy's tape. The Hollands hold a proper funeral for Barb because now they know that she's dead. Dr. Owens meets with Hopper in a bar, and he gives Hopper a forged birth certificate listing him as the father of Jane Hopper, which is 11. Mm-hmm. Steve takes Dustin to the snowball and teaches him like how to fix his hair and shit. It's like a Hawkins middle school dance. And he meets up with the party. A slow dance starts. Will is asked to dance. Lucas asks Max to dance. Dustin asks a bunch of girls to dance, but is rejected. And so Nancy, who is serving punch at the dance, sees him alone and upset, and she goes and dances with him. Joyce and Hopper talk, and they're all like kind of lovey-dovey with one another. 11 shows up at the dance, and she goes and dances with Mike. And Lucas and Max kiss, and 11 and Mike kiss. And they all enjoy themselves at the dance, and then you see the school start to rotate until there's another version of the school upside down. And you see the big like shadow monster towering over the school. And that's the end of season 2. So season 3 begins like a year later. Mike and 11 are in a relationship, which Hopper is pissed off about. There's a new place called the Starcourt Mall, which has become sort of the focal point of the town.
What's his name is working there? I remember those memes. I love those memes. How are you again?
Will starts to feel like something is up. after a massive power outage, but keeps wanting to believe that nothing is going on. But there definitely is. The beginning of the season starts off in Russia. And they're trying to like bore into a wall, but nothing is happening, and it kills a whole bunch of people in the area, and like this guy comes up and tells this like super nerdy dude named what is his name? I'm drunk and cannot remember his name. Anyway, we'll call him Glasses Guy for now.
No, I love it. Yeah, this is like Glasses Guy.
So he they tell him that he has a year to perfect it, and then we start with the whole like everybody being in a relationship or whatever. But that's how it starts. It literally starts in fucking Russia.
This show can never start in like the main place, can it? It's always gonna be like, and then in Hawaii. Oh,
no, it's super. It will never start in Hawkins. So Nancy and Jonathan have jobs at the Hawkins Post now after their whole debacle with the like they had this massive thing that went live like across like globally. Nancy is trying to make a good impression, but she has a bunch of like sexist bosses who don't think that she'll do a good job. Again, 80s. Dustin comes home from summer camp where he claims to have met a new girlfriend named Susie.
No one believes him.
Nobody believes him. Billy has become a lifeguard at the Hawkins community pool where he is admired by a group of middle-aged women, including Karen Wheeler. Hopper begins to turn to Joyce for advice for confronting Mike and Eleven about their relationship. Steve is working at an ice cream parlor called Scoops Ahoy at the mall, where he is attempting to charm up women. And he has a coworker named Robin, who is a fucking treasure. I love her so much. But she pokes fun at his like attempts to like court women. Joyce is preparing a speech for Hopper, and he asks her to go to dinner. Joyce claims that she has plans, and Hopper is disappointed. Dustin takes everybody to Hawkins' tallest point to build a new powerful radio that they can contact Susie with. Mike and Eleven claim that they have a curfew, which prohibited them from joining the rest. And there are rats. Rats are shown on screen to be gathering at an abandoned steelworks, where they begin to explode into pieces.
Okay.
It
now
is.
It's gone from like this thing's growing to now this thing's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
It is big gross. I will go ahead and give you a hint. This season's like theme is Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead.
Oh no.
Billy asks Karen to go on a date at a motel, which Karen agrees to. Dustin can't get a hold of Susie when he tries to contact her, and Lucas and Max still don't believe that Susie exists. They decide to wait for her to respond anyway. Joyce keeps having flashbacks of Bob upon returning from work and ends up watching TV on her own. And the magnets on her fridge mysteriously all fall off simultaneously without her knowledge.
Like, did she see it happen, or did she close the door and all the magnets happen?
Like, though, the next morning she sees that like all the magnets have lost magnetation off her fridge. That is actually an important part of this story, which is fucking wild,
Well,
but sure.
I'm guessing because, like we said before, that the compass is in point north, that it's pulling magnetism. Because that's
Yes.
how compasses work.
But
okay, I don't
remember...
want to go compass in Drunk Fandom. I'm sorry, I don't want to go in... I'm messing this up.
No. But remember that the lab is shut down now. That's an important thing to remember. While cleaning up, Nancy...
The secret we'll use for later.
While cleaning up, Nancy receives a call from an elderly woman named Doris Driscoll concerning a story about infected rats. Hopper confronts Mike at 11, and while they share an intimate moment, but rather than following Joyce's advice, he decides to do things his own way by telling Mike that his grandma is sick and in the hospital, getting him alone, and then threatening him while taking him home.
Of course.
Yeah. After what seemed to be a few hours of Dustin attempting to contact Susie, Lucas and Max decide to leave. Will follows after not long after they leave, and Dustin feels alone and dismissed. He doesn't feel this way for long, though, as he receives a Russian transmission from his super radio. Karen is about to leave for her date before she has a change of heart. Billy is already on his way before something attacks his car as he drives by the steelworks, and he crashes. He is then dragged into the steelworks down a flight of stairs by a bunch of vines.
Oh, now we got the first day of the dead. Now this is going to be my least favorite season. I can just tell by right now.
Billy is released from the steelworks and immediately finds the nearest telephone booth and calls 911 before experiencing a vision in the Upside Down where a group of clones of himself cryptically order him to build an army. The next day, 11 calls Mike to find out why he hasn't shown up yet. Mike lies and lies to her by claiming his Nana is really sick and that he can't see her for the whole day. 11 can tell that he's lying, and it makes her confused because
spoken like everyone else. Oh, my grandma was sick. Now my Nana's sick. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Hopper, saying that his plan works, proceeds to visit Joyce at work and gleefully tells her everything and takes another crack at asking her out, which succeeds this time. Nancy gets out of work and brings Jonathan along for her secret deceased rats case. Dustin reunites with Steve and is introduced to Robin. Dustin asks Steve for help in translating the Russian transmission, which, I mean, that's going to go well.
Russian in the 80s. Come on.
11 pays Max a visit to talk about Mike, and upon hearing the story, Mike says, you know what? Ignore his calls, threaten to dump him if it doesn't explain himself, that sort of shit. Because apparently her and Lucas have broken up multiple times over the past year. But Mike turns to Lucas for help. And Lucas is reassuring Mike. Max takes 11 out to have some fun and takes her to the mall.
This isn't going to end well. I can just tell.
Oh, it's not.
Right there that this is going to be the worst mall ever.
At the pool, Karen attempts to apologize to a visibly disoriented Billy. He verbally dismisses her having a vision that he attacked and hurt her. And walks away from her. Every single one of his senses seems to be attacked by his surroundings, essentially, because he seems really woozy, and he's hearing a bunch of things, and his sense of smell is off, and he's really weird and disoriented and sick. At Scoops Ahoy, Steve and Dustin are struggling to translate the transmission, and Robin walks in on them and offers to help because she's fucking bored. She's like, sure, I'll help.
Does Robin just know Russian?
Nancy and Jonathan show up at Miss Driscoll's house to inspect and ask questions about the diseased rats that have been devouring her fertilizer. She thinks that they have rabies, but she doesn't know, but they've definitely been eating her fertilizer, which is really weird because fertilizer is a base and it'll, like, eat your insides.
Yeah, not something most creatures go for. They usually go for the plants, not the fertilizer.
There are a bunch of protests to be shown to be taking place outside City Hall, while Hopper has a meeting with Mayor Larry Klein, who is played by fucking Carrie Elwes from, Princess Bride fame.
Yep.
Who orders him to get rid of the protesters. Max and Elle go shopping at the mall, while at the same time Mike and Lucas and Will are at the mall shopping for a present for Elle. Joyce is getting really suspicious of the constantly falling magnets and asks Mr. Clark about it, who basically, like, literally, what is it? He's listening to Weird Al's My Baloney in the basement or in the garage, I mean, and she's asking him, like, a bunch of questions about, like, what could cause magnets to fall, and he's like, oh, well, if it was, like, a super fucking electromagnet or whatever. Nancy finds another lead for the case as Jonathan takes photos of the rats that Mrs. Driscoll caught and begins to believe that there's something seriously wrong with it because it starts to, like, convulse and shit. As he leaves, it literally explodes into, like, a bunch of, like, gooey viscera and, like, slides out of its cage. Billy is getting worse and worse as he's trying to avoid the sun because it's literally burning his skin. And he goes to take a cold shower. Heather Holloway, one of his coworkers, asks if he's okay. And Billy has, like, a weird, like, vision where he hears her say, "Take me to him." And he attacks her and kidnaps her. 11 and Max are on a shopping spree while the boys are trying to find a good gift. They eventually end up bumping into one another. Shocker. 11 gets pissed off.
How convenient.
And tells Mike that he was lying and dumps him. Hopper arrives at his dinner with Joyce, only discover that she was too busy with Mr. Clark that she forgot and never showed up.
Oh, that's
Robin translates the message to...
Like, how did they use a book or something? Like, how
yes.
did they transfer? Oh, okay.
But she translates the message to "The week is long, the silver cat feeds, when blue meets yellow in the west." They also discover that the transmission was made in the mall. Hopper drunkenly leaves the restaurant after Joyce doesn't show, and Billy brings a gagged Heather to the steelworks, where she is confronted by a weird, big, fleshy creature.
Oh no!
At Hopper's cabin, 11 uses her powers to eavesdrop on the boys. Hopper enters her room thinking that Mike is present, only to find that it's Max. Relieved, he allows Max to stay the night. Elle proceeds to spy on Billy. Coincidentally, at the same time he was delivering Heather to the creature. What Elle witnesses disturbs her. And the next day, like, they decide to, like, go out and try and figure out what's going on. Will is in a festive mood as he declares a day without girls at the Wheelers' house, A day that entails a game of Dungeons and Dragons, of course.
Girls can't play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Joyce pays a disgruntled Hopper a visit in order to fill him in with her suspicions about the magnets and how she thinks that they're connected to the lab, though he dismisses her instantly because he's pissed off that she, left him on red, essentially. Despite this, Joyce forces him to investigate the lab with her. Elle and Max investigate Billy's room, where they find a bloody lifeguard's whistle. Robin continues the translation while Steve and Dustin comb the mall for Russian spies. Back at the Wheeler house, Max and Lucas are showing little interest in Will's campaign, which leads to him giving up and storming out of the house. Mike tries to apologize.
The moody phase of Stranger Things happening now. I didn't think it was possible because then it got so much more moody.
Yeah. Mike tries to apologize to him, but Will is like, no, and he rides his bike out into the rain. 11 and Max go to the pool to return the whistle to the, lifeguards, whatever, and they find out that the owner of it, Heather, hasn't shown up in the past couple days.
Blood on the whistle. She's been gone for 3 days. What could this mean? A mystery fun.
11 finds a photo of her and uses that to find her in the void, where she's found in a tub of ice begging for help.
Wait, 11 can just find people with pictures now?
Yes.
That's such a... God, I wish I had that kind of power. I'd make so much money finding people's dogs and be happy about it.
Hopper and Joyce go to Hawkins National Lab, which triggers a flashback of Bob's death when she walks into the lobby. They are literally beaten the fuck up by a Russian dude who looks like the Terminator, and that's one of the references for this episode is they have this big Russian dude who looks like the Terminator.
Don't worry, friend, I am totally American.
Yeah, they have this dude coming after them the whole time. Dustin spots what he believes to be an evil Russian who turns out to be a jazzercise instructor, but Robin figures out what the message is. It is pieces of the mall. So the Silver Cat Feeds is a shoe store or whatever, and where blue and yellow meet in the West is a time on the clock, because there's a blue hand and a yellow hand. But Nancy brings her story to work, and Tom Holloway and their colleagues, including Bruce, are they ridicule her and are like, that's not a story. She convinces Jonathan to come with her back to Mrs. Driscoll's house to find more evidence to present to them. And while that's going on, Joyce and Hopper find nothing really at the thing, but they get beat the fuck up. Mike and Lucas follow Will back to his house to apologize, but he isn't there. Will is at Castle Byers, and he gets real pissed off and destroys Castle Byers. Nancy and Jonathan show up at Mrs. Driscoll's house only to find her eating fertilizer and making really weird growly noises in the basement. And they call the ambulance. They call an ambulance for her.
Yes, let's send the crazy zombie-turning woman into the hospital. That one's...
Yeah.
As we live in the pandemic.
Steve, Robin, and Dustin witness an argument between what they assume are Russians, which are involved in moving boxes into a secret room guarded by armed men in the back of the mall. They accidentally make a sound which alert the Russians to their presence. and the three of them make it out of there before being found. Elle and Max arrive at Heather's house only to find her family, her parents Tom and Janet, Tom being like Nancy's boss, having dinner with none other than Billy. Heather appears to be well, although though she and Billy were acting very strangely. The girls make their way out, but right as they're leaving, Billy recognizes Elle as being the girl that shut the gate a year previous through the Mind Flayer's memories, which is that big like shadow monster thing. They all call it the Mind Flayer. Simultaneously, Will starts to feel the Mind Flayer's presence again, which leads him to inform Mike and Lucas that he's returned. And at Heather's house, Janet passes out because they gave him poison, essentially. And while Tom is distracted, Heather hits him across the head with a wine bottle and drugs him. Max seems convinced that everything's fine. Elle is like, fuck nah. At the same time, Mrs. Driscoll's taken to the hospital while screaming, I have to go back, repeatedly. Tom and Janet wake up in the steelworks, and these big, like, fleshy vines attach to their face and start force-feeding them whatever the fuck the shit is.
Probably actual shit if they're feeding off manure and fertilizer.
Yeah.
So probably actual.
Mike, Lucas, and Will try to gather the whole party together, though they're unsuccessful in contacting Dustin, who is currently with Steve and Robin trying to figure out how they're going to get into the secret room at the mall. While they're trying to come up with suggestion, Robin leaves with an idea, telling the other boys, or the other two, to stay put. Tom fires Nancy and Jonathan for the mess that they've created with Driscoll. 11 and Max reunite with the boys, as well as explaining his suspicions and theories about the Mind Flayer. Based on what happened last year, he believes that that the Mind Flayer has most likely chosen a new host. They go to City Hall. At City Hall, Hopper and Klein are together, and recalls seeing somebody that matched that description outside the mayor's office last time, which Klein claims not to remember him. This leads to both of them like beating one another up. Klein eventually reveals to them that the man works for the Starcourt Mall and has been bribing him for properties throughout East Hawkins. Hopper demands to see records, of course. Jonathan's pissed at Nancy for getting them fired. And they essentially are like, I guess we no longer understand one another. Robin talks about, like, we can sneak in through the air ducts, but none of them can fit. And so they essentially, like, are like, oh, well, they figure out that, like, Lucas's sister Erica is at the mall, and they're like, we'll give you free ice cream forever if you crawl through that vent.
Does he do it?
She does it, yeah. Like she crawls through the vent.
Sorry,
But it gets all of them like locked in an elevator that goes down into the bottom of the mall.
Oh, good. There's a bottom to the mall. Great.
Yep. Max and everybody
the
are.
mall isn't creepy enough. It's gotta have a bottom dungeon, like, I'm sure, where they store all the horrible boxes that they try and get rid of.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Everybody is, the party, air quotes, thinks that Billy's been acting weird, while Joyce is convinced that the machine that, like, Mr. Clark was talking about has to be at one of the properties that are in the area. Mike tries to apologize to Elle, blah, blah, blah. But they end up, like, taking like Billy and locking him in a room in a sauna and like dialing the heat up. And you see Mrs. Driscoll like screaming, and she has like these black veins popping up all over her face while like Nancy is visiting her in the hospital. And she's like screaming, and like Billy starts like crying and freaking out and being like, he made me do it. I didn't want to hurt anybody. He made me do it. And he breaks the window and almost like attacks Max. Lucas shoots him in the head with a slingshot, which knocks Billy out, and he starts convulsing, and the lights around them flicker. And the lights in Mrs. Driscoll's hospital room begin to flicker. Billy goes for 11, and 11 uses her powers to restrain him, which works for a little bit, but he grabs her neck, and Mike saves her. And then Billy goes to try and attack Mike, and 11 raises him in the air and throws him through a brick wall. And Billy runs off into the night, and Heather kind of attends to him in the steelworks. And it pans out, and you see that there are like tons of people from Hawkins standing in the steelworks that have been affected, or that are now like essentially zombies.
So I'm guessing they can't burn it out of all of them.
Yeah, no. Steve, Dustin, and Robin and Erica have no way to get out of the elevator shaft that they're stuck in. Hopper and Joyce come across a farm as one of the listed locations, and they go to check when Grigory, which is the big like Terminator man
guy, yeah,
appears and starts beating them all up again, and they run out, and they kidnap a scientist, which is Glasses Guy from the beginning, and his name is Alexei. That was his name.
So now we know Glasses Guy. Excellent.
We do. They essentially like kidnap him and head out into the world. And they head to Murray Bowman's house. You know, that Murray Bowman.
Wait, so what happened with Gregor? Like, he starts beating them up, and then...
Well, they escape him. They, like, run away.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
11's been spying on Billy, who is becoming increasingly aware that she's there. And Nancy and Jonathan are stuck underneath the Starcourt Mall, and they... the doors open, and they escape out into like this underground laboratory. Which, so the mall has been a front this whole time for this giant underground Russian lab. Nancy begins to collect her story or connect her story for what the party has discovered, and this leads them to believing that Mrs. Driscoll, Tom, Heather, and all them are all, air quotes, flayed, along with Billy. They proceed to investigate the Holloway house and find a whole bunch of fucking like cleaning supplies and shit that they've drank and eaten.
So weird. Like, what is it doing to them with all these like cleaning supplies and stuff?
It's making them soft, and it's eating their insides. It'll come up later.
Okay. Sorry, just wondering out loud. I'm sure if I was watching it, it would be saying like, "What the fuck is it doing?"
So, Hopper, Joyce, and Alexei show up at Murray Bowman's house. From like the original, or from season 2, he's the crazy guy who was talking about Russians being in Hawkins, and the one that leaked the story with with Jonathan and Nancy. And he does the same shit that he did with the other guys, being like, "Oh, you guys are like you're into one another with like Hopper and Joyce," and they're like, "No, we're not." The rest of the gang go to the hospital to try and find Mrs. Driscoll, but they find that she's not there. Only Nancy and Jonathan are allowed to go up to visit her, but the rest of the guys have to stay downstairs. But Tom Holloway and Bruce, like two of the flayed, show up and attack them. Nancy and Jonathan are running through the halls. They get separated, and both of them end up killing their respective persons. So they kill Bruce and Tom. But the two corpses start to convulse, and they melt down into this like fleshy viscera, and slide into the hallway towards one another and combine into one another and make this big giant corpse flesh monster.
No, not a flesh golem. No, I knew it was coming when we talked about softening No.
Yep.
Not a flesh golem. I knew it was coming.
Steve, Dustin, and Robin and Erica are found by the Russians, and Steve and Robin give the other two time to hide, and they too are captured. And they're like interrogated and given truth serum and all this shit, and they're like trying to figure out like, where did you come from? And they just keep going like, we work for Scoops Ahoy. Like that, we're not spies, we just work for Scoops Ahoy. Like, please God. But they torture the two of them and drug them and all that shit. The flesh monster chases after Nancy, who locks herself in a room. The monster is able to like squeeze itself through a hole in the door. And Jonathan is trying to save her, but he can't get into the door because she locked it. And Nancy's like, I'm gonna fucking die here. But Eleven like bursts down the door with her powers, and throws the monster outside. And
has Eleven met Gregory yet? Like, I really kind of want.
She's
like,
not.
I'm
No.
Gregory. I'm just, and then like get thrown like 50 feet with my.
No, but the monster like retreats down like a storm drain. The next day, there is supposed to be a fun fair in town, and Mayor Klein meets with Gregory and gives him a day to find Hopper. At Murray's house, Alexei is refusing to talk without meeting specific demands, which drives Hopper crazy, and Hopper is like, you know what, fine, fuck you, and he throws him outside. And Alexei realizes that his best option is just to side with, Hopper and everybody. Dustin fills Erica in on what happened over the last 2 years as they like go through air ducts, which leads to an argument over whether or not Erica's a nerd, which is super cute. Nancy and Jonathan and the party regroup at Hopper's cabin, where Elle is searching for members of the Flayed through the void. Mike and Max argue over Elle's rights and whether or not she deserves better or whatever, before she tells them that she found Billy. At Murray's warehouse, Alexei and through Murray's translation, begins to communicate to Hopper and Joyce what they've been doing for the past couple years, and they find out that essentially the Russians have been trying to access the Upside Down because Hawkins was like the last known location of being able to do that. So the Russians made this fucking big machine that would bore into the walls in Hawkins to try and get them into the Upside Down, because they're now curious about this too.
There's curiosity, and then there's monsters have been teleporting through this fucking thing. Stop it. Come on, guys. The Americans want nothing to do with it. Come on, you must know that's bad then.
Well, I mean, the Americans did want something to do with it until they were shut down by the government.
Well, yeah, so I'm saying, like, we fucked up so hard, like, when we can't touch shit, it's like, okay, that shit's probably too dumb to even fuck with, because the Americans didn't fucking want to deal with it.
But, Joyce tries to get a hold of the kids, while Hopper reassures Alexei that he will get him to his key, though Alexei claims that access to it is impossible. Dustin and Erica commandeer a cart and taser as Robin and everybody screams for help. She and Steve try to free themselves, which they fail at, and they share a moment before the Russian officer comes back and gives them that truth serum I was talking about. The party believes that Billy is coming up with a trap. So they come up with a new idea. And when she tries to reach him, she succeeds in accessing his memories, where she sees him as a child sharing a moment with his mother. Hopper sends a distress call to Dr. Owens before he, Joyce, and Alexei and Murray head back to Hawkins. Steve tells the officer about Dustin, who claims he's long gone right before an alarm goes off, distracting him long enough while Dustin and Erica knock them the fuck out with the taser that they found. 11 continues to see more of Billy's childhood and the abuse that he dealt with from the hands of his father. And she finally reaches the steelworks when she thinks that she exits the void, only to see that she's alone, and Billy enters the cabin claiming that he knows where she is and that everything him and the rest of the fleet have been doing has been for her. He claims that he's going to end her and her friends and everyone, and then leaves. Then 11 leaves the void for reals. The flayed start to begin to gather at the steelworks, and literally fall down and melt into one giant spider goo thing. And then, so, everybody ends up Hopper and everybody end up at the fun fair. Grigory shows up and kills Alexei, for being a traitor. He chases after Hopper and everybody. Everybody ends up meeting one another at the Starcourt Mall, where there's this fucking... So, Alexei dies, and then there's, this big... everybody ends up gathering with one another at the Starcourt Mall. Which is where, the big final battle takes place. Billy shows up as the kids are trying to leave, and he keeps trying to, he keeps revving his car engine, he's gonna, slam it into them or whatever. And the big flesh golem shows up, and I mean, first off, they're at the they go to the cabin, and 11 gets grabbed by the ankle, and it implants this bug thing in her, and she's able to rip it out and kill it, but it gets rid of her powers, so she no longer has her powers. And so they have their big final battle at the Starcourt Mall simultaneously, while Joyce and Hopper and Murray are breaking into the Starcourt laboratory where the big machine is. And they're being chased by like Grigory and stuff, and they make their way through, and the kids are trying to help them figure out the code. And there's a moment where Dustin and we find out that Dustin actually did have a girlfriend named Susie, and she makes him sing Neverending Story with her.
Oh boy.
But so they figure out the code. And they get in, and that Grigory guy is like attacking Hopper, and Hopper ends up throwing him into the machine, and it backfires, and Hopper looks back at Joyce and smiles, and the machine explodes, and then Hopper's nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, the kids are dealing with like their own shit right now, and they're fighting off the big like flesh golem, and it's upset because like, now whatever, but it starts to attack the people inside, and Billy has like a change of heart because 11 comes in and is like, look, I know what you've been through. I've seen your shit. Like, I know that your dad was an asshole, and I know what your mom looked like, and she was beautiful, and blah, blah, blah. And, so she gets through to him, and he, like, steps in to, like, stop the thing, and it kills Billy. And in killing Billy, it essentially kills itself. And it kind of melts down into a bunch of like goo in the middle of the Starcourt Mall. And there's a letter that that they find, and it was essentially Hopper's speech originally, and like 11 reads it and she cries, and it's all sad. And the buyers are packing up because fucking Joyce and Will and everybody are like, we're out, we're leaving. We're not going to live in Hawkins anymore. We're bye. And they're adopting 11 essentially. So they all pack up to move, and they all move out of Hawkins. They all move out of Hawkins. Mike and everybody stay, but they all move out of Hawkins.
Can't blame them. This place sucks.
It does suck. Max is still upset about her brother dying because she saw that like he had a good side. And we end in Russia again. And this dude is being essentially fed to a Demogorgon. And these Russian guys walk past a bunch of cells, to get this guy. And they're talking, and they stop at one cell, and they say, "The American?" And then they go, no. And then they continue on. And from what we've seen so far, there has been, like, promo material for Season 4 where the American that they're talking about is Jim fucking Hopper.
Oh, no. Oh,
So we guess that he escaped the machine exploding and killing everything in the area by hopping into the Upside Down, and then he was captured by the Russians. And that is everything Stranger Things so far.
all right. Not gonna say it's a coherent journey, but
It's
it
better.
sounds interesting.
It's definitely better if you watch it. I promise. If you're not listening to my fucking drunk ramblings.
I might give it a try now. Sounds fun.
What did you learn about Stranger Things first and foremost?
That people need to stop going to the Upside Down because it's not a cool place.
It is a cool place.
Burned. No, it's not. There's monsters in there. Stop. You're one of the problem. Like, I love Godzilla. I don't want Godzilla in reality. It's like being a 440k fan and being like, do you ever want to visit your favorite fantasy world? And you go, fuck no, that place is terrible. I like it. Fuck you. I never want to go there. I've learned that all these people can be really dumb. They're the 80s, so they can be really dumb, all of them. Especially when it comes to emotional attachment.
Yep.
Don't live in this town.
God fucking help the Byers family.
Help the Byers family. Let's see, what else did I learn? Stop going the upside down, damn it. Like, okay, this thing keeps getting smarter and doing different things to, like, attack humanity. Stop bringing it into reality. It's a bad move.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed me describing Stranger Things, and I really hope that it makes you want to watch the show, because it is super good. It's one of my favorite shows.
Maybe I'll have a Netflix party around right now, and we can all watch Stranger Things, and then we can all drink and be like, and then they all fucked, and that's what happened. Because that's an emotional roller coaster of some shit right there.
Stay tuned for season 4, because that's going to be coming out soon. I'm super excited.
Now the Italians are looking at the upside down. It's like, stop doing it!
But, I mean, there's rumors that season 4 is going to be the last season, so I'm big sads, but yeah, I definitely recommend watching it. It's like one of my favorite shows. It's one of the only shows that I watch whenever it comes out, so it's super good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking time out and explaining it to me, Deacon.
No problem.
I think that wraps it up.
Yeah. We will see you guys in the next episode. All right. Bye.
Bye. The ferrets say stay salty.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching our video. Now to give a special shout out to our sponsor tier patrons. Nejikuma, we appreciate all the support you give to us. You keep the channel growing and the content flowing. If you want to be alerted to when we post a new video, make sure to ding that bell next to the subscribe button. If you like the content you see here, then consider tossing us a follow on twitch.tv/fierceferrets.
And if you're really feeling the ferrety love, please consider supporting our work at patreon.com/fierceferrets. We don't make any money here on YouTube, so we rely on the generosity of our Twitch and Patreon subs, listed in these credits here, to bring more quality entertainment to you. And you'll get some great rewards for helping out. Thanks again, friends!
And we'll see you next video.